But what's your name again? What's your full name?
So David Ring, player
David.
development is what
Yeah,
we do out in San Diego. This is the DR podcast where we're just having like coaches, like yourself, join, just talk hitting, everything baseball. So today's guest, Bobby Maganalles, he's the hitting coach for the Atlanta Braves. I've been following you for a long time, my guy. I mean, excited to talk to you, learn from you a little bit, have our guests kind of, especially the hitting coaches that follow me, just kind of with a passion for the game, or maybe they're looking to get to the big leagues. I mean, I think I've got a lot of questions for you. Excited for you to join. Last year, you won the World Series. I mean, unreal. We're about to watch it coming up here shortly. First off, let me go over the sponsors. We got 2950. They throw me some gear. They make shorts, and I got Freestyle Cut and Stitch. These guys are awesome. They've been making the Padres jerseys that you see. These guys are wearing these on the field before the game, which is kind of cool. Throwing the football around and having a blast out in the sun, So check these guys out. These guys have been hooking it up. Like I said, Bobby's a coach for the Braves. I mean, he's done it all these last couple of years. You made the playoffs last 2 years. You won the World Series in 2021. We all know the run you guys had. It was incredible. I've heard stories about, you being on the podium and just the perspective. I mean, I'd love to hear from you, kind of maybe start with a super fun story you haven't shared with anyone, about maybe a behind the scenes hitting story, something that happened during that World Series run that, maybe was an influential part of the championship run. Maybe it was something that you just really cherish as a hitting coach. Give us just a cool story to start with from that 2021 run.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, David. But I can't say just one specific thing. To be honest with you, as I'm reflecting on this right now, because there were so many really nice moments. As a hitting coach, you build relationship with players, and that's what the key is the relationships. You build them, then there's trust built, and then they buy into what you tell them once they trust you. But there's just a lot of things, in those moments. Obviously, we had some players that were obviously phenomenal players, but it clicked in terms
Right.
of them doing well at the right time. As you've seen in the last couple of years, not necessarily the best team that wins is probably the hottest team, and teams that get hot, man, watch out for them. But we had a special group. But basically, it's just those moments inside the cage are pretty cool. It's when you talk hitting, when you're, they're asking questions, and preparing them for what the pitchers are gonna do. But as we'll get more into into our discussion right now in this talk, it's there's a lot of cool moments that go into there.
Yeah, and you had some special players, like you said, that came through in the clutch that weren't with you this year, like Jock Peterson, Freddie Freeman. But then you had a new influx of players, which has been incredible to watch. The Michael Harrises and guys that have kind of performed as rookies, and watching Matt Olson kind of take over that first base slot. I mean, he's a pretty impressive player in itself, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about right away, is get into those players. But as far as hitting coaching goes, like, in general, a guy like me is a little bit younger than you, has aspirations of someday making it to the big leagues and possibly coaching in the same right as you. What are some things that you have, some nuggets that you can give to hitting coaches, maybe that, to keep going along the process? I've been doing this for a while myself. I'm in the trenches in the cage with minor leaguers and pro guys in the off season, but it's different for a guy like you. And, what advice can you give to hitting coaches moving forward that aspire to be where you are?
First of all, to keep grinding, to not give up on that dream. It it took me 31 years to get to the major leagues. And I played 12 years professionally, all in the minor leagues, played in Mexico as well. And then coached for 20. And finally, last year was my first official year as a major league coach. I was with the team in 20 in the COVID year. But my first actual, actual title as a big league hitting coach was last year. So number one is the advice, and what I advise is just keep persevering. If it's one word I can describe last year's team, there's one word or describe the season last year, it's perseverance. That's what our team did. And in many ways. And me personally, my story is that it took me a while that I just kept grinding and grinding and kept getting better. So don't give up on that dream and keep learning. I think as leaders, we're learners. A leader's a learner, and we're going to keep learning and learning. Every year we're learning something new. Keep improving, keep adding tools to your toolbox to help the hitters. And because by us getting better, they're going to get better. The better we get, the better they get. So we're doing it for them. And so that's another thing too. Just keep learning. My story, I ended up getting a master's degree in performance psychology at the age of 50. So it's never too late, because I want to keep learning. I want to keep getting better. And that took me to another level as a coach, where I think it helped me out to be at this level, was just that degree. Because apart from the mental part of hitting in the game, I learned about motor skill learning, and that helped me a lot with teaching hitting and get better understanding and grasping how we learn. So that's the nuggets I can give the hitting coaches out there, is just keep learning. And it's about the player. And there's no one way of doing things. Is get to know the player, because in social media you see so many things out there, and certain guys are out there in social media I read up on, and I see what they have to say, and there's some good things, but it's almost all just one thing that they teach, and that's not what things about. I mean, in the Blues we have 13 hitters, and there are 13 different hitters. You're gonna have 13 different swings, 13 different mindsets, and you got to click and connect with each one. I can't be teaching the same thing to everybody. So that's where I'm going, in terms of don't have just one way. It's okay, you got to know the swing, you got to know the person, and what makes them good, and what they can do.
Yeah, hitters don't really know, or they don't care how much you know until they can tell that you're invested, and they know how much you kind of care about the process and helping them too. I mean, I think that's one thing you mentioned earlier, being able to relate to the guy and connect to the hitter, I think is so important. And one thing that I try to be on their level, and that's being relatable, I think is hard in the game. There's so many different ways to relate to someone and so many different personalities, but a hitting coach has got to find his way to be able to relate to the Dansby Swanson, or switch to the Alex Dickerson that you had in the beginning of the year, that was one of my guys that I've known in San Diego here. Everyone's a different hitter. They're all completely different mentally, and they talk about the game differently. I want to talk about Dansby. I mean, he's Dansby Swanson. He's your guy's shortstop. He's probably one of the best shortstops in baseball right now. His WAR was phenomenal this year. I mean, a second year of being consistent. You talked about him being one of the strongest mental players that you've ever coached. You mentioned that in an interview, and I thought that was really interesting. How has that contributed to his success over the last couple of years? And then I want to dive into kind of how you guys are training a little bit behind the scenes. So talk to me about what you mean by he's the strongest mental player that you know.
He number one, he's very talented. That's number one, very athletic. And he prepares probably better than anyone I've been around with. Mentally, he prepares physically, and he's ready to play every game. And with Dansby, he knows himself, and he knows his swing. He knows what he can do, and that has helped him out so much. I've been seeing just as he has evolved to the player he is right now. In the last, I've been really privileged and honored to be with him the last 3-4 years, and every year he keeps getting better and better, and not only just physically, but he keeps getting better mentally. Like he's starting to get what he can do, and all the clutter that goes into his mind sometimes where he overthinks things. Now he's starting to know how to, like, you know what, let certain things go. You know what, this works for me, this doesn't. And he comes in with a good state of mind. And this year is where he went over the top, where he was so consistent all year with his cage work, because it's so easy to go from one thing to another and start changing things. He just stayed consistent, tweaked a couple things, here and there, but stayed consistent with his routine in the cage, his routine every day. And I'm a big believer in routines and have a plan what you're going to do every single day. But he gets his confidence from his preparation, and he also has a mental guy that he has big faith in God. He has, he's our chapel leader. So there's a lot of those things that went into it in terms of him having the year he had this year.
That's fantastic. I think one of the things, it's not everyone has the same routine. And I know it'd be a vague question to ask a coach, like, hey, what are some drills you do with guys? But, you and Dansby have developed a relationship where you talk about certain things in the swing. And I thought an interview that I once listened to, you talked about block training and random training. And I think that's something that our listeners need to learn about. You don't hear people talk about it very much. And I want to know a little bit about Dansby's routine. If you can reveal maybe a couple things that he sticks to every time that are key things. Maybe it's a T drill where he's hitting the ball off the back of the net, whatever it is. Talk a little about blocking and what that term means and how you're randomly training your hitters to get ready for games. Mm-hmm. And then just reveal a little bit about Dancy's routine. You don't have to give us too much.
No, well, he prepares. He knows himself. He knows what he can do and what he wants to focus on every day. When he goes in the cage, he is prepared. He doesn't go in and flip coins. Okay, what am I going to do today? He has a plan of what he wants to do every single day when he gets to the cage. And basically, he does his one hand work, and he does top, bottom hand. He'll do no lower half swings where he just wants his torso to move to make sure that his heel stays down more, because he tends to kind of shoot out his knee and the hand shoot out and around, so he stays more grounded. So he does that drill, a lot of that, and then he'll go into his flips. He likes to have a little bit angle flips, which helps him out a lot. And then he hits the ball. He hits it up the middle of the way. But that's basically what he does in terms of the block. That's more block. The randomness that he does is right before the game. So right before he's going to go get ready to go outside for the game, that's when he does the machine. And that's where the randomness comes in. So he prepares right for the game for the machine. So, but he keeps it simple. I mean, I'm telling you that this season is probably as simple as he's kept his routine, and he was consistent with it all season. And I'm telling you, he had the best season of his career. And there's something to be said about that. But that took, 3-4 years of that to get to this point.
Evolution. Yeah. That's pretty cool to hear. And I think, to just reference the block training is, when someone says that, it's more repeatability. It's when you're doing a drill, it's doing the same thing over and over to build that, that nerve memory that is required to just go do it in the game. And, if I asked you about 10 different players, you'd tell me probably 10 different things as far as how their routines go. But I think it is good for hitters that are growing up and that need to learn things that are meaningful. Like you said, working on maybe a one-hand drill is meaningful for someone because it helps them do something. Maybe a no-stride drill is meaningful to that one person. And I think that's something that hitters have got to find when they're young, and they've got to find a way to be more repeatable, because a lot of times, like you said, because they're not block training, they're focused on the ball. And then it's just see ball, and then the repeatability is so hard to come by, right?
Yeah, you know what? So you got to have a little bit of both. I mean, the block training, like you said, it's doing something over and over and over. There's no chaos. There's nothing. It's just doing that one thing, and you got to do that. So when you want to have a hitter make a certain move and you're working on a certain move, you got to have some block in it. So that means the ball is not an issue anymore. I could care less if they hit the ball. We just want to work on the move and the feel of that move. And once we get it, then we add some more to it, and then we put some chaos in it, some randomness to where now you're going to prepare you for the game. But you need some of that block training just because you're working on a certain move. That's why everyone has their different routines. That's why, again, when I said earlier about, one way of hitting, and, some people believe in this and believe in that, and that's it. Oh, everyone does that. No, everyone's different. Okay. What's this guy, they might be a guy has a tough time getting to his rear hip. Another guy has a tough time, getting to a good launch position. Whatever the case is, I'm just throwing stuff out. You got to work on that. And everyone's different because they all have different issues, and also their bodies move differently. Everyone has a different body. So what can his body do? And that's where you got to go. Okay, I got to put him in this position to help him make this move because his body doesn't allow him to make that move. So now we have to overcompensate and do something else. So that's why everyone's different. But they're all, like you said, 13 hitters, 13 different routines. That's the thing. Different mindsets and the way they perceive things and grasp things. So that's why teaching hitting is pretty difficult.
Yeah, and it's every day is a new challenge, and that's kind of why I come to the cages and I'm ready to go. And it's like you're doing something new every day, and you're mixing it up with players. One day it's like you said, curveball machine, and we did some block training and then curveball machine. But a lot of what we do at the facility is make sure that there's a foundation for, within the hitter to make good movements so that when they do the randomness, right, things function a little better. And that's kind of what you're saying took Dansby a little bit to kind of find a way maybe to get his routine down. And then once you added that randomness in, you've been doing that for what, 3 seasons now, or has that been when he does the machine before the game?
Yeah, for me it all started. I'm telling you where it all started for me. I was with the Cleveland Indians in the minor leagues coaching, and it was 2015. I was in a high A ball coaching, hitting coach there, and all of a sudden where it all started was that year where I feel like I kind of evolved as a hitting coach. And so we had the top prospects in the whole organization that year, and hit as hitters. And we start off the first month of the season, we were last in every offensive category. I'm going, oh my gosh. And these are the top prospects. And so with that said, I was kind of going like, hey, what are we doing wrong? What's going on? And I talked to our manager, and we're striking out. He's like, well, we just can't hit a curveball. We got to get the curveball machine. And I went, no, I think it's the fastball. We're not getting on the fastball. No, watch this. So the game was, we were talking. I said, you know what? I'm going to chart today. I'm going to do a different chart. So I charted that day. I'm going to keep track of all the fastballs that we missed. And for me, a missed fastball is a fastball that you either take for a strike that you can hit, you foul it off, you swing through it, or you put it in play weakly, or you take it for a strike, where you take it for a strike as well. So taking it for a strike, swinging through it, fouling off, and put it in play weakly. A fastball that's a hittable fastball, not just one that's like on the blag on the corners. So that day, I can't remember the numbers, but I'm just going to go random numbers, kind of ballpark figure. Opposing team threw it like 150 pitches. They threw 7% fastballs. So they ended up throwing around 80 fastballs, I think it was. Out of those 80 fastballs, they threw 60-something% strikes with them. Out of those 60% strikes, which ends up being, I think it was 50 fastballs they threw for strikes. When I took that day, fastballs we missed 43 fastballs out of the 50 that were in the zone. And I went, oh my gosh, that was an eye opener for me. And when I showed the manager that after the game, he was floored. He goes, oh my gosh. I go, it's not the curveball. I go, we're missing the fastball. And another thing too, I didn't count 2 strikes It was before 2 strikes. We missed 40-some fastballs with before 2 strikes.
Wow.
So with that said, I went, okay, until we can hit a fastball and get on it, I slipped the machine. And I had a meeting with the hitters and I said, we're going to hit the fastball machine. No more feel good flips. Oh my gosh. I was a bad guy. They hated me. Who is this guy? This and that. What does he think? Well, how am I going to get my confidence? I'm like, this is what we're going to do. Sure enough, they're getting blown up. They're hating me. And about 5 days into it, man, they started getting on it. And I'm telling you, about maybe 7 days into it, it was night and day. We led the league in every offensive category that season, including walks. Walks shot up through the roof. We were getting on it. I'll tell you a testimony of that. We faced Lucas Giolito, and he had a point-something ERA going into that game against us. He was lights out that year in A-ball, throwing 100 miles an hour with the nasty curveball too, 12-6 curveball, good bite. And I told our guys, we're jumping on the first pitch fastball. Don't let them get ahead. Get on it. So I juiced the machine that day. They were just fouling everything off in the K. They couldn't even put it in play. I mean, I just juiced it up. And they bought in because they saw the results. Well, that game, leadoff hitter, double first pitch of the game. Our 2-hole hitter, base hit the right, 1-0. Our next hitter, double, 4-hole hitter, homer. He threw 7 pitches. We were up 4-5-0 in 7 pitches. And it was incredible. They're like, he didn't know what happened. He hadn't gotten hit like that. And so point is it works. It's the randomness of it. It's like I could care less. I want them to look ugly. I want it to be, because I love ugliness. I say, I like ugly. Ugly works. I go, because you need your A, B, C, D, E, and F swing to compete. You need them all. And so they bought in, and we raked. I mean, we raked. That's all I can say after the first month being the last in everything. So that's, the randomness of it is important, and you can't be afraid of a challenge, because if it's easy and you're doing things right, you can hit 10 out of 10 off the machine, then you got to make it tougher, because that's it. You're not getting better. You got to keep challenging yourself and making it tougher every single time.
Is there something that, from being in the big leagues now and being around some incredible players, is there anything that you've seen, the transition, whether it's, they spend a few years in the minors and they're immediately in the big leagues? Is there some sort of transition where you've got to talk mechanics in certain ways with guys? You've got to talk mental stuff with guys, and because from my experience, there's guys that are constantly working on things, and just because someone gets to the big leagues doesn't mean that they are where they need to be. You look at a guy like Bryce Harper. I mean, his swing has evolved incredibly over the last nine years or however long. Rafael Devers, he's eliminated a lot of sloppy swing back in his swing, and just in my opinion, I see changes in hitters, and I'm curious from your perspective, is there something that Coach Mags has that's like, man, okay, this guy's a rookie, I got him, he's a new guy, I got to make sure mentally we're stable, we're on the right track, we're doing some things in the cages to kind of get you to be more consistent. And I'm just kind of curious about that aspect.
Well, first of all, you get to know the hitter first. Again, I talked earlier about relationship. Let's get to know him. You come right away and like right away you don't know the guy. You start talking about, your swing, this and that. They normally won't buy in. You got to let them be. Okay, what can you do? I need to get to know you. What is it when you're going well? What is it when you're going bad? Let me get to know you and your swing, what you can do. You let them be. But we're always coaching. I tell our hitters, I go, don't call me coach if I'm not going to coach you up. Then don't call me that, because I'm here to teach and coach you up and make you be the best you can be that day, every single day. So we're always coaching. Sometimes you got to stay quiet. That's coaching. Sometimes it's not necessarily a mechanical thing. It might be just a quick cue, and that helps them. Whatever it is, again, that's when the relationship comes in, get to know the hitter. But no, I mean, a rookie comes in. I'll give you a perfect example. Michael Harris, he comes in and he was struggling a little bit in Double-A when we called him up, and they're like, they don't know if he was ready. But I end up talking to one of our hitting coordinators in the minor leagues, and and a hitting advisor in the minor leagues, a very well-known guy, Greg Walker. And we talked, he was Max, he was coach him up. He was, don't be afraid. I go, I want to let him, I want to let him see what he can do. He was, no, he was coach him up. He will listen to you. So, okay. So when Michael came in, he had a couple issues. I'm going, oh man, like, he was steep coming down the ball. Hands were high, everything. I mean, he disconnected from his front side, was disconnected. It worked this way. I'm going, oh man. So we gave him maybe 2-3 games. He's okay. We're going to do this. And one thing we got together and said, okay, let's get his hands down. So he started, when he came up, he was here. We dropped his hands and had him kind of go forward this way so that when he got to a good position, his hands were so high and coming down on the ball. Right. And we lowered his hands. He felt kind of weird, but man, that first session in the cage, he's like, how does it feel? I was like, oh my God, it feels good. And we were like, dang, that's pretty good. So he lowered his hands, and the rest is history. 300, 290, whatever he hit, 300. All because, and it was within days he got to the big leagues. So, yeah, there's certain things that you do with certain guys. You gotta let them be. But again, that's where the experience comes in. What plays, what doesn't play, and what can this guy do? And that was a game changer for him and our team.
And that's interesting. It's kind of a good example of, someone, like you said, already have a good foundation, and then you make them a little more comfortable, a little more efficient, and the athlete kind of takes over. And that's your job. I mean, that's our job. Our job is to do things for the player that they're not really noticing themselves. And it's hard to formulate, practice plans to get there and stuff. And, Michael Harris seems like almost a 5-tool player. I mean, he's stolen bases, he's hit for power, he's hit for average. He's playing outfield with, the best of them. Like, do you feel like he's going to mature into a 5-tool type player because of, that season was pretty incredible. You got to see it firsthand. Give us a little more about what you see for the future in Michael Harris.
Well, he's already a 5-tool player. Average, power, speed, Gold Glover, plus arm. I mean, he already is. So he's already developed into that. Now we're hoping he can keep this consistency going. And again, what an impressive rookie year. But yeah, we definitely see that in the future for him.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, do you reach out to players in the offseason and touch base as far as how they're working? I know there's kind of a disconnect between that and players in the offseason. But I do know some players connect with coaches. How does that work for you and the players? Are you connected to them and their off-season programs?
Yeah, I'm not saying we talk often in the off-season, but yeah, there will be, texts or maybe calls. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? They'll either call me or text me, or vice versa. I call them or text them. I just want to see how they're doing. If there's anything they need from me or how I can help them out. And basically, I like doing that just to keep the relationship going. But not only that, I like to know what they're doing too. Like, hey, what are you working on? What is that's going on? Just to kind of have an idea for when we see them in spring training. But yeah, again, I'm not saying I deal with every single hitter, but I try to stay in touch with the guys to see how they're doing and if there's anything I can do to help.
Totally. Do you, when I see a hitter over and over and over, I start to build, like you said, a relationship with them, and I know their cues, and I know their routine, and I know, what they need to do to kind of get ready. Talk a little bit about, how you cue some of your hitters, and maybe that's something that's a little vague, but talk a little bit about, some important things for you as a hitting coach that you want guys, building in the off season, especially, like making sure, hey, Michael Harris is coming back, being on plane, and, whatever it is there anything that are huge for you?
Well, yeah, cues are important. I mean, because again, every hitter is different and perceives things differently, thinks differently, and understands it differently. And we have to speak their language. It's not our language at all. It's their language. Okay, I've heard coaches and even organizations say, okay, this is our language. We all have to speak the same language, and I disagree. We have to speak their language. There's certain things, philosophies, that we go by in terms of, okay, this is what we believe in as an organization, and I agree with that because we all have to be on the same page with that. But in terms of the language, it's their language. It's like everyone perceives things differently. you know, and so I'm big on cues. Cues are huge in coaching and teaching, not just baseball, any sport, even in a classroom setting. The cues are big because that's what's going to help them understand. Oh, so that's what you mean. Certain cues will help a guy make a certain move, and they'll get it because one cue might not work for other people. And again, with that being said, it's getting to know the player again. Like when in the case, like, hey, what's going on? What are your hobbies? What do you like doing? What does your mom and dad do? Are you married? How many kids? All that stuff, man, is what I talk about in the cage when I get to know a guy. All that. Once I get to know him, like, oh yeah, he likes to hunt. Next thing you know, like, oh, hunting. Okay, so all of a sudden now, let's say I'm seeing something in his swing, and I will use a hunting analogy. Okay, when you're hunting, when you're seeing that, when you have a rifle, you're shooting, and you're shooting at whatever you're going duck hunting. You shoot, but you keep that rifle going, right? Well, he was, yeah, okay, this is what I want you to do. And I want you to keep that bat going through the zone. Just pretend you're shooting at that, that duck. And oh my God, and it clicks for the guy, like, oh my gosh, yeah, now I'm staying through. All of a sudden now they're just staying through the ball hitting good just because it was an analogy that they can relate with. It can be fishing. Okay, how you like fishing? Yeah, all of a sudden I'll use a fishing analogy. Or what do you play? I was a basketball player in high school, and okay, well, when you came off the pick, how did you receive the ball? Which side did you? And maybe help him with that, getting to his rear hit better. Whatever it is, it's like I try to click with them to like, oh, okay, and now you're like, oh man, this guy gets it, and then the relationship builds even more. It's like, oh, this guy knows me, and that's where it clicks. So getting to know people and what they can do, how they think is very, very important.
Yeah, totally. I heard a story. I listened to all the podcasts you did. Like I said, I heard a story you talked about one time where I lost my thought. Lost my thought. Whatever. What were we just talking about?
Just about cueing.
Oh, cues. Yeah. So you had this coach, and I remember you telling the story, and it was like I was doing a round of hitting, and I got out of the cage, and the coach was like, "You'll never hit like that in the big leagues," and that stuck with me. That was something I remember you said you remembered, and I feel like those are some of the experiences that you've drawn off of to be the type of coach you are now, because I just don't see you relating to players that way, and I see you, being a completely different than that. But I think, mentally, the comfort that you get with a hitting coach when you can just rely on them and you can look at them in the dugout or whatever. I heard Dansby say that in an interview. He was like, I looked over at Mags one time, and like just that trust that you could have where, you know everything about the hitter. I think it's interesting, as opposed to, first thing you see a guy in the cage and you're like, boom, boom, let's fix this. I mean, I know that's our job, but it's also our job to create trust. And I think, that was a cool story I heard. That led to you struggling too. I mean, that was something that you mentioned, because for whatever reason, you and that coach hadn't built a relationship. It led to some mental issues and you not trusting your instincts and just being the player that you were, right? And talk to me about some hitting coaches I know the hitting coach network in the big leagues is small. Is there anyone that you really admire that the hitting coaches that are listening to this that we need to keep following, including yourself? And is there anyone that has maybe influenced you and helped you get to where you are today?
Well, I mean, I've had quite a few people that have helped me. When I first started coaching, Ty Van Berkeley was a guy I learned from. Ty, very good hitting coach. He's retired now. I think the year before last was last year in the big leagues. Many years big league hitting coach. Learned a lot from him. But I've learned a lot from a lot of people. Another guy, Mike Brumley's a guy that has had probably the most influence on me in terms of knowing the swing and everything. He taught me a lot. He's a very, very intelligent hitting guy.
Is he with an organization?
Yeah, he used to be with us. with the Braves as a hitting coordinator, and
Got it.
he does his own lessons now, and he's an incredible guy. And then probably a guy that I've never worked with personally, but because I've been around guys, his disciples, is Craig Wallenbrock. That's another guy that has a lot of guys out there, and that are now in major league coaches, and if not, coordinators. But he's another guy that I've learned from. I've done some Zoom calls with him, and picked his head on hitting. But I mean, gosh, I'll leave a lot of people out, man. But there's just been a lot of guys that have helped me in terms of hitting, and also the Cleveland Indian organization. I learned a lot from there. Man, they're really good in terms of teaching the hitting there, and I learned a lot on actually. And I credit them a lot because it was through the Cleveland Indians I ended up getting my master's degrees in performance psychology. So I thank them a lot that they helped me to get that degree. And I learned about the motor skill learning. I learned about the Brandon and block practice. I learned about the swing, through a lot of guys that they have in there. So it's, you keep, like I told you earlier, we keep learning. I mean, we learn from everybody. I retain what I feel is good, and whatever I don't like, I just throw it out. I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I really agree with that or not, but I filter it through everything else, what I believe in and what I've learned in terms of hitting, how the body moves, and also the mental part. Like that's another thing too, in terms, it's not just hitting, but it's how to teach. And a good teacher can teach anything, not just hitting. A good teacher will know how to teach infield. They'll know how to teach pitching, because you give them a curriculum and they'll know how to get that point across. And the thing, it's like good teachers are hard to come by. Good coaches are hard because a good one knows how to teach anything. And those are the special ones. So I try to become a good teacher and a good coach. I'm trying to learn to become better in communicating, in listening, and how to give the information across. All that stuff is not just the movement, which is very important because you got to have the right moves to be able to execute an approach and a plan, but it's also how to teach it.
I agree, man. I think that's one thing that's hard for players nowadays, is because there's so much information about hitting and the swing out there that everyone's trying to master that, when the information about, like you're talking about, mental approach and performance and stuff like that is just important, like training randomness, being in the mindset that even if your swing's not perfect, you can still go in and compete. And I think a lot of young hitters don't develop that competitive mindset first, and that's where then when the swing evolves, the plan evolves, the player evolves. But if you just try to develop swing only, I think it's tough. And I think what you said is huge. We as hitting coaches are mental skills performance coaches too. I mean, we have to, and talk about like Matt Olson. Matt Olson seems like one of the most cool, calm players on the planet. I mean, he is having phenomenal seasons with the A's. He went off with you guys. He had another big season, powerful season. Talk to me about his demeanor and getting to know Matt Olson a little bit as a hitter. I don't think enough people, I mean, they will now that he's on the Braves, but I don't think enough people understand how good of a hitter Matt Olson is, and how well he's hit in his first couple seasons, and how good his numbers are. If he keeps this up, I mean, he's got Joey Votto numbers right now. It's pretty impressive.
Impressive is the word. I was impressed by him. Really good hitter. He's so even keeled. He's so strong mentally too. I mean, this guy, and he went through a stretch where he wasn't really hitting that well. I mean, pretty bad, probably his worst stretch of his career. And he would come in the cage every day, just even keel, good attitude, ready to go. Hey, it's part of it. And he works. And this guy goes in there and he's working. He cares about his swing. He's always trying to figure it out. He goes and watches video, asking for opinions. I mean, he's very coachable. And I mean, this is a guy that is going to want to get better every single time. He wants to get it, and he cares. And what's amazing is just how good of a hitter he is, because he he wasn't as consistent as he was maybe the year before, 2 years before, or the last couple of years, and still had a great year. It's like, wow, man, I mean, this is incredible what this guy can do. And the key, you know, as a hitting coach is, yeah, we're trying to get our players to hit. But to me, another key for a hitting coach, a good hitting coach, is get a guy to hit when he's not feeling well. How can I get him to hit when it's not going good? How can I get him to still compete when his swing's not well, when he's not doing good, not feeling good? That's the key, because I'm telling you, in this game, in all the years I played professionally, 12 years, I could count on these two hands the amount of games I played in which I felt great in 12 years. You don't. It's like, that's why you can't base it off of how you feel. Feelings go out the door. Like, how do you feel? You're not going to feel good, but you got to go compete. You know, very rarely do we feel great when we're up at the plate. And so how is it that you're going to compete? So that's the key, is that getting them to hit when they're not feeling good. And because it's going to be the majority of the time you're not feeling good when you're going to hit. So, and that's where I learned, actually, as coaches, I learned from the players, and I learned a lot from Maddie this year. Is, man, I go, for this guy to still go out there and do it and compete through that whole slump, and him knowing that that wasn't, you know, what he's been doing, you know, in his career wasn't as good as he's been doing. He stayed right here, wrote it out, and when the season was over, man, he put up some impressive numbers. And he's a special hitter, special player.
That's great. I think, you know, speaking of feel, I'm interested about one topic, because you've had two lefty hitting first basemen, but they both throw right. And that's something that a hitting coach, you know, some hitting coaches understand the importance of knowing that, and some don't. Working with a righty hitter is different than a righty thrower lefty hitter. Is that something that came up? And I'd be interested to know, is there anything that those players do because they're lefty hitters, righty throwers, that maybe some guys, I mean, there's a lot of hitters that I work with that are growing up that way. And I think coaches need to know, players need to know that if there is something that you guys do.
Well, I mean, you're right. It's going to be tough for a right-handed thrower that's a left-handed hitter to do a top hand drill. It's their weak hand. Their top hand might not work as well as their bottom hand, because they're stronger with their right hand. So yeah, there's certain things that they're going to do differently. Like, you know, we talked about getting to know hitter. You're bringing up good points. Like, okay, you know, maybe a guy who's righty can do this, but a guy who throws right but hits left maybe can't do this certain move because his body won't allow him, because he's not coordinated with that hand as he is right with the right hand.
Right.
But you get to know him and get to see what they can do. That's the thing. Okay, what can he do? What does he do when he's doing well? What's his swing like? What is his moves like? What's his mental state? What's his thinking when he's going well? And that's why getting to know a hitter is very important. Then you work from that. And every swing is different. Every body's different. The way they think is different. So yeah, that's a good point, because sometimes we forget that, you know, we want them to make a certain move, but you know what? I really can't do it because I'm a right-handed thrower, you know, so I can't really do something with this left hand that well. And it's going to be a little bit uncoordinated when you do a certain drill with that hitter with that top hand.
Totally. And those two guys were completely different hitters, right? I mean, Freddie Freeman, a preset posture and Matt Olson kind of being a little more of an upright hitter. But when it comes down to it, mechanics and movement are the same. How, you know, Matt Olson, I just want to maybe talk about this a little more. Like Matt Olson, I feel like he gets on plane a little differently than Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman kind of has a little more of a kind of not a looping knob, but a knob that kind of goes down and up through the zone. And Matt Olson seems to kind of get on plane a little earlier.
Matt.
When you first met Freddie, like, you know, how does that work for hitting coaches working with guys that are unique? Because I think so many players these days grow up and maybe they have like an interesting move, but coaches are putting them in positions of just normalcy. And I don't know. You're just not seeing the Darryl Strawberries. You're not seeing the Gary Sheffields. You're not seeing the from my perspective, working with hitters, you just don't see any of that flair. How is it that, and how do we go about working with hitters that do things differently and not in our ideal, we have this perspective on hitting, all of us, and we know kind of what we want the hitter to do. How do you stay away from that with guys like Freddie? Because I know he's not traditional. Matt Olson to me is a little more traditional of a hitter. He does things that visually more guys do, right? So how do you deal with that, man?
Well, again, we said it so many times, is building the relationship, getting to know the hitter. What can he do? What does he do when he's going well? It's looking at video in the seasons that he's done well, and then like now comparing it to what he's doing now. And okay, let's see where the similarities are at. And again, it's what can the hitter do? That's the bottom line. Can you hit? Who gives a crap how you do it? Can this guy hit? And if he can hit, you leave him with that. Okay, this is what he does when he's going well, and because they know themselves. And so that's the main thing, is to get to know the hitter, what works for him or not. And again, Freddie's so special. Freddie's a special hitter, incredible, one of the best all-time hitters. And he keeps it simple. Freddie keeps it as simple as possible, and Freddie knows himself. He knows the swing. He knows what he wants to do. And he's, again, that's all I can say, is he's a phenomenal hitter. So now would I go now and teach him, okay, look, Freddie Freeman hits 300 and power, so we're all going to hit this way? No, because that's what works for him, but again, it's getting to know each guy, because everyone's different. Everyone, Matt's different than Freddie. Dansby's different than Matty. Riley's different than Swanson. They're all different, man. Everyone hits differently, feels something different. Their strengths are different. Everyone is different the way their body moves too. Example has what's the name of Matt Olson has so much mobility. He is mobile as him, and probably Mookie Betts might be one of the most mobile bodies in the major leagues. They're so mobile. They have so much mobility. Some guys don't, so they can do a little bit more things. And I've heard guys go, yeah, these guys on social media post so many swings on Mookie Betts, and watch this, and you got to imitate that. But you know what, Mookie Betts, his body is out. I mean, one of the best mobile bodies there is in baseball. Right. These other 95% of the rest, or 90% of the rest of the major leaguers, their bodies don't allow them to be. They're not that mobile. So no one can say hit like this guy. Well, his body allows him to do that. That's why he can stay on plane longer. What if a guy, let's say a guy's back shoulder doesn't have that much mobility, and this is as far as it can go, he's going to be more steeper with the swing because he can't make it go back. So now you're like, come on, let's go. And he can't do it. So now does that make him a bad hitter? No, it's like, okay, I got to work around that. How are we going to get him now more on plane, or to make him more efficient with what his body can do? So that's where we come in, and we have to know those things. And we can't just make a guy be like this guy, hit like this guy. No, that's who he is. Right. That's what he can do. What can this guy do? So we're all different, and again,
all guilty of that.
And we lose credibility as coaches when we say, "Oh yeah, swing like Mookie Betts," and the guys are going to be talking behind our back, going, "This guy has no idea," And it's like, and we gain credibility and trust when we work around what a guy can do. Now you go, "Oh man, this guy gets it. Oh man, this guy understands me." Okay, right. There you go. Finally, someone understands me, that I can't make this move, and they think I'm uncoachable. No, you're not uncoachable. Just your body doesn't allow you to do it. So there's so much into coaching that, it goes back to getting to know and studying, and it's all about the player.
Yeah, I'm totally guilty of that. The Josh Donaldson phase, we call it. I mean, we all admire him as a hitter, and I think he's a really relatable hitter. He's a normal size for a human being. I mean, and he does fantastic things as a hitter. And so we all had that phase where, I knew that was a phenomenal way to move. I just don't think, like you said, everyone can do that. So that's part of the process for me along the way too. An interesting question here. Last question of the podcast. I'll let you go, dude. Thank you so much. You mentioned as a team, like you guys are, the Braves hunt fastballs. I mean, that's something that good teams do. Talk to me about maybe next year, the following year, a Dansby Swanson who had, 180 strikeouts last year, but had a phenomenal year. Is the K's something you look at and you're like, hey, Dansby, a little bit of this in the offseason routine work, we're going to, over the course of the next couple of years, maybe do this to try to eliminate that? Or is it something that you're sticking to, hey, we're a drive the ball team early, and even we're going to give up some at bats even late in the count to still try to drive the ball? I don't know how it works with guys, but I'm super curious on that approach from a major league hitting coach.
Well, we're always looking to improve. So that's number one. It's like, okay, what are we going to do to improve for next year? And always, even though you have a good year, you did pretty well, okay, what are the areas that we can improve on? And weaknesses, you're never going to eliminate a weakness, but you can minimize it. And because you never want to lose your strength. That's the thing. A lot of times we try to eliminate weaknesses that we get away from our strength. Next thing you know, we can't even do our strength anymore. And now you're like, now you're worse off. So we want to definitely minimize our weaknesses. But yeah, I mean, to me, no one, I don't believe in striking out. It's like, I don't want to strike out, but it's part of the game. If you're afraid of striking out, you're thinking about it, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to strike out even more. So again, that's another thing that comes into play, the mental part of that too, the psychological part, like, okay, how we can minimize strikeouts. But to me, I think that the biggest thing for me is not so much the strikeouts, which it is important. I'm not saying it's not, but I'd say for me, it's the walks. You want the walks to be higher, because by having more walks, you're going to get on base more. By having more traffic on bases, you have more of a chance to score runs. So it's about the ultimate goal of an offense: score runs. That's what the goal of an offense is to score runs. How are we going to score them? Well, we need traffic. We need base runners. So we can, that way we're not to just getting solo home runs.
Right.
We want with multiple people on base. But the point is that it's, I think when we hit a stretch there, a little bit of a slump, it wasn't so much the strikeouts. What was happening is that we were walking less. Like, oh, there it was. Once we started walking more, even though we were striking out, we were scoring more runs.
Right.
And so to me, it's like, yeah, we want to minimize the strikeout, definitely. But we want to make sure we're still getting on base and having some quality at bats and getting some traffic going. That way we can score multiple runs, and that, because that's what the ultimate goal of the offense is: score runs. So, but yeah, we're always trying to improve. Next year, we're definitely looking into that right now. It's like, okay, how can we improve for next year? Well, what can we do better? And a lot of times, you can say, hey, they put the ball in play once you get 2 strikes. But when we, again, just from my psychology background, when we think, hey, 2 strikes, hey, shorten up and put the ball in play, the first thing we do as soon as the ball is left the hand is like, okay, put it in play, and we're going after it no matter where it's at. And that's when we expand more and we chase more and we strike out more, when we try to put the ball in play. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh my gosh. And it's like a little bit like, what do you mean by that? I go, think about it. It's like, so, okay, as soon as the ball, he's released, okay, put this ball in play. I don't even know where it's at. I'm already going. I'm seeing the ball. I'm going after it. Right. And that's when I expand and chase. And like, man, what's going on? Well, I'm trying to put it in play, but I still keep swinging at it. Yeah, because that's why as soon as your mind's already set, I'm going to go after this pitch because I want to put that ball in play instead of changing it however works for the hitter. Maybe that does work for the hitter, but we got to know what works for him, how he's got to think to where, okay, what do I need to do here? Because if we start expanding with 2 strikes and the opposing team is expanding with 2 as well, we're going to chase and strike out even more when we do that.
Yeah, it's more about feeling control of the barrel with 2 strikes and still being able to get your swing off. I think, that's where you're going to see a guy no stride or something, and they still feel like they can take their swing, but maybe their barrel control in their mind is there more. I think from the common fan perspective, it's not a very good take. You look at like, oh, guys need to put the ball in play more, and from my perspective, it's exactly what you're saying. It's more that we need to learn to have quality at bats, and strikeouts are a part of the game, especially late in the game in the major leagues, because I mean, you've got relievers throwing 100 miles an hour with unreal stuff. The strikeouts, that's what they're in the game for. They're in the game to strike out guys. That's what they're getting paid for. And you know, I don't think enough people understand how hard it is to hit some of the spin. Like, players come back and they probably tell you, like, I don't even see that pitch sometimes. I look like a fastball, or, you know, this looked like it was a splitter, and it looked like a heater in out of the hand, and, you know, and the hitter. So I think that perspective isn't there. And from a coach's perspective, that's good to hear. Like, you know, everyone, that's not what's happening in the big leagues. That's more that, you know, hitters are hitters, and they're trying to compete still with 2 strikes, and some pitchers are going to strike you out. And, you know, I think obviously as a hitting coach, you know, we want our players to put the ball in play, but we want to give them the best chance to succeed. And I think this is such an intriguing, you know, time that for me, I get a chance to connect to guys like you, and you're so close to the field, and it's like such a wonderful time that we get to talk baseball with guys like you, and you're willing to contribute to the community, because I think that's my ultimate goal with these podcasts, is to just keep getting good information from guys like you out, and try to wash out all the eyewash stuff. That's stuff that maybe works for some people and doesn't work for others. And you know, you're the type of guy that you want to learn from. You've taken the right road to success, and said congratulations on the World Series. And I hope you have a fun off season with your kids. You said it's family time. Enjoy it. I'd love to do this again. Hopefully you guys don't beat the Padres in the World Series moving forward, but I know you guys are going to be back. So best of luck. Can I call you Mags moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's what they call me. So yeah.
I know, that's just for all the people. That's Coach Mags. I mean, this guy, he's the best. Thanks again, Bob. If you're looking to follow you on Instagram, where can we follow you?
Yeah, at Maganalles Bobby at Instagram, you know, at Maganalles Bobby. And also I have another account at Swing Ugly. I use that for hitting, which I hardly use that one, to be honest with you, but that's another, I have another account hitting. Yeah, I don't put up too much hitting stuff up there because I'm so busy, but yeah, again, I named it Swing Ugly because my players, you know, years ago when I first said, you got to get a hitting account. I don't even know what to say. They go, you know, one of your sayings, what do you always say? I always say, let your hair loose. See, that was one of my sayings. Hey, let your hair loose. Quit thinking about it. And they go, no, you know which one you always tell us? I go, what? He goes, Swing Ugly. And I went, okay, that's my account, Swing Ugly. Because, you know, like, so that's what
you to post more on that account, because that is legit. We all know what it means now. If you're not practicing ugly, then you're not practicing hard enough for the game, baby.
So that you can follow me on Instagram, absolutely. And I'll try to put some more. I'm gonna try to put some more hitting stuff out there. But no, thank you. This is, you know, we all learn. You know, these podcasts I like doing just because we're trying to learn. We're all learners, and the more we can learn from one another, that's the thing. I mean, there's no egos. There's no, like, you know, one way of doing things. Like, okay, how can I keep learning? I'm a big believer in that. And, you know, you have a lot of conferences that people go to are great too, with some really good speakers, but we learn from one another. You know, as iron sharpens iron, you know, one man sharpens another, and we're always trying to get better. And that's all it is. And again, like I said earlier, if we get better, the players are going to get better. And really, we're doing it for them.
Yeah, I'm excited to go use some of this stuff at the facility today, man. I mean, every time I do a podcast, I learn something new. And thanks again for joining me, man. This was freaking awesome. DR podcast. We're going to have more coaches moving forward. Let me press stop here.